Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to session number 300 of Kevin Reed's A Course in Miracles. And today we are continuing in our reading and discussing of the pamphlet called Psychotherapy, Purpose, Practice, and Process. Okay. So we did the last session, the purpose of psychotherapy, and Jesus said, well, healing is of the mind, so psychotherapy is the way to go, in his estimation. All right. And the purpose of psychotherapy is to help the patient or the client, whichever way you want to look at it, the person, to see that there are other perspectives, right? Or there is another perspective. All right? It helps to remove the blocks to the awareness of who you really are, right? To your true self-concept, right? It's even psychotherapy is a process in helping one to realize their true self-concept as the decision maker. Right? The only true self-concept in this situation we find ourselves in here. All right? We have many self-concepts. All right? That's, greatly discussed in the Course. All right. We first make up a self-concept of a separated individual. All right. And it just goes on from there. And we keep changing those self-concepts. All right. And the psychotherapy helps to get us to the point where we can realize that the decision maker is a true self-concept. This way we can decide what is truth, what's illusion. Right. Okay, so and it brings us closer to the realization of who we really are. So that's the purpose of psychotherapy, is to help us on a path. Okay, it's a tool. All right. And I think Jesus was talking to Helen and Bill Thetford about these things because they were psychotherapists. They were clinical psychologists, as was Dr. Ken Wapnick, right? Who was a great friend and a great help to Helen Schuckman and Bill Thetford. Right? Ken helped them to edit the Course and became its first and most prolific teacher. Once again, a clinical psychologist. Okay, so this today is the process of psychotherapy. All right. Let's just hear what Jesus has to say about it, okay? The process of psychotherapy. Introduction. Psychotherapy is a process that changes the view of the self. At best, this new self is a more beneficent self-concept, but psychotherapy can hardly be expected to establish reality. That is not its function. If it can make way for reality, it has achieved its ultimate success. Its whole function in the end is to help the patient deal with one fundamental error: the belief that anger brings him something he really wants, and that by justifying attack, he's protecting himself. To whatever extent he comes to realize that this is an error, to that extent is he truly saved. All righty then. So psychotherapy is a process that changes the view of the self. I mean, when I related that story about coming to my counselor and my teacher, Emily, and saying it can't be everybody, I came to the realization that I was angry at everyone, right? And as Jesus says, you're trying to help someone. We're all psychotherapists in that sense, all right? I know it doesn't mean you can hang out a shingle or anything, but we're helping each other to change the view of the self. Right? And at best, this new self is a more beneficent self-concept. All right? So my study of the Course and my conversations with Emily would help me to calm down, so to speak. Right? In the immortal words of Taylor Swift, you need to calm down. All right? But psychotherapy can hardly be expected to establish reality. So psychotherapy is not expected to establish the true self, the Son of God, who you really are. That true self, that true part of the original Creator. Right? That true self that never left the oneness, that is just constantly innocent. Psychotherapy can hardly be expected to establish that, but it helps on the road to that. It's a stepping stone, as the quantum physicist, I believe it was Mr. Bohm, would describe awarenesses as stepping stones, right, to the awareness of your place in the universe, so to speak. Right. So psychotherapy can't be expected to establish the true self. Right? That's not its function, he says. If it can make way for reality, it has achieved its ultimate success. So just as it says in the beginning of the Course in Miracles, this is not a course in love, which is far beyond your ability to grasp, but it is a course in removing the blocks. Just this was what psychotherapy does. It helps to remove the blocks to the awareness of love's presence. Right? So psychotherapy can help us to remove the blocks, right, to the same thing. Right? To the awareness of who we truly are. But it helps in dealing with our self-concepts. Okay. Its whole function in the end is to help the patient deal with one fundamental error, and that error is believing that anger brings me something that I want. So when I was telling Emily, I'm angry at everybody. So that there must have been something that I thought that anger brought me. Anger got me something, and that by justifying attacks on everyone, I was protecting myself. Now, you'll probably, either you probably know it already, or you'll come to realize that that's a reaction to fear. That by my anger is justifying attack, I think I'm protecting myself. To whatever extent he comes to realize that this is an error, to that extent he's truly saved. So to whatever extent I can realize that I'm not being attacked, I don't have to attack. To whatever extent I can realize that, I'm on my way to being saved. And by saved, in the Course, we mean being released from the ego thought system, released from the original error, which says I'm separated from love. I'm separated from the oneness. So, and what he's going to talk about is magic and resistance. And in the Course in Miracles, magic is seeing that the problem is outside the mind and we find a solution outside the mind. It's a magical solution. Everything's a magical solution, really. All right? Dr. Wapnick, he was really proud of it too. His definition of magic was it's a maladaptive solution to a non-existent problem. Okay? So everything is, all these solutions are magical. Right? And what that means is that we're looking for a solution in the world of form, outside the mind. Right? The true solution is realizing that I am not separated from love. I'm not separated from the oneness. I'm not here on my own in a me or you existence. Right? The ego will counsel us and say it's me or you. That's why you have to get angry. You have to protect yourself. You have to bark like a chihuahua all the time. Right? So anger is a magical solution for protection. Right? Paragraph 2, patients do not enter the therapeutic relationship with this goal in mind. Right? On the contrary, such concepts mean little to them, or they would not need help. Their aim is to be able to retain their self-concept exactly as it is, but without the suffering that it entails. Their whole equilibrium rests on the insane belief that this is possible. And because to the sane mind it is so clearly impossible, what they seek is magic. In illusions, the impossible is easily accomplished, but only at the cost of making the illusions true. The patient has already paid the price. Now he wants a better illusion. All right? So he says, patients do not enter the therapeutic relationship with this goal in mind. You know, this changing of the self-concept and realizing that you're not the victim, and, you know, you're realizing the true self. He says people don't go to therapy with that in mind. Right? He says usually the aim is to keep the self-concept. I want to be Kevin. Right? I want to be exactly who I am, but without the suffering. Right? I remember when I was in group therapy, I don't know, 1991 or something, I don't know, something like that. Whenever it is, I realized I needed a little more help. I don't know, I said to the therapist, I wish there was like an actual physical event that led to the way I felt. Right? So in other words, I wanted to change that. I wanted to feel better and still be Kevin. Right? The aim is to be able to retain their self-concept exactly as it is, but without the suffering that it entails. I've since learned a lot more about myself. Thank you. It's a lot less suffering, believe me. But the whole people, he says that people go into therapy because they just want to feel better, right? Not to realize that I'm a child of God. Right? Nobody's going to the therapist to do that, probably not. Right? They just want to feel better. And he says that their whole equilibrium, the whole balance in their existence, rests on the insane belief that this is possible. Try not to be insulted by the way Jesus throws around the word insane and insanity. And things like psychosis and things like that. As Dr. Wapnick would say, the entire world is one big dissociative identity disorder. Just a little psychological joke there. But that's the way to look at it. The one Son of God, the one offspring of God, split into a bazillion pieces. So it thinks. And doesn't even remember doing it. And the whole equilibrium is rest on this insane belief that this is possible. That I keep the self-concept and just get rid of the suffering. And because to the sane mind it is so clearly impossible, what they seek is magic. All right? So the solution that's outside of the mind, the solution that's outside of going to the decision-making part of the mind, going to the Holy Spirit and asking, help me to see this correctly, being willing to see it correctly, being willing to have your perception changed, being willing to see the innocence. He says, but mostly people just want the solution that's in the world, the solution that's outside the mind. All right? In illusions, the impossible is easily accomplished. All right? So we can, the therapist is confident, we can help you. All right? But only at the cost of making illusions true. So, the solution that's outside of the mind, the magical solution, just reinforces the illusion. Right? Reinforces the illusion of a world, of a society, of a family, of, whatever encounters you are bothered by. Right? The patient has already paid the price. Now he wants a better illusion. So the patient has already paid the price by believing that they're separate from a oneness. Now they want a better illusion. All right? And he says this is a little nutty. But that's the way it is until we start to question everything. All right? And it's a process. As Dr. Wapnick always would say, nobody goes poof. All right? And Jesus says it in a more poetic way. You're not taken up and abruptly hurled into heaven. All right? It's not like that. All right? It's a process. At the beginning, then, the patient's goal and the therapist's are at variance. The therapist, as well as the patient, may cherish false self-concepts, but their respective perceptions of improvement still must differ. The patient hopes to learn how to get the changes he wants without changing his self-concept to any significant extent. He hopes, in fact, to stabilize it sufficiently to include within it the magical powers he seeks in psychotherapy. He wants to make the vulnerable invulnerable and the finite limitless. The self he sees is his God, and he seeks only to serve it better. Right? So the self I see is only the ego self, my God. That's how I worship that, and I want to make it better. All right? So he says, even in the beginning, even in the illusions, the therapist might have a different idea of what's good for you. All right? So you have to come to some middle ground. All right? Because I want to make the vulnerable invulnerable, whether it's my body or my psyche or whatever. Right? I want to make it invulnerable. I want to make this finite existence limitless. Right? I want to make it better. The patient hopes to learn how to get these changes without changing his self-concept to any significant extent. Right? So regardless of how sincere the therapist himself may be, he must want to change the patient's self-concept in some way that he believes is real. Right? The task of therapy is one of reconciling these differences. So the therapist, I give him my story, my background, and tell him what I'm feeling and what I think is wrong, and then, he summarizes and makes a plan, and he's going to help me to change my self-concept. Suppose I go in there and I'm so angry, I'm feeling the victim all the time. I've been victimized by this and that, and I feel helpless and hopeless. He wants to help me change that, right? And it might be a bit of a struggle for him, because I might say, oh yeah, but what about this? So I'm pushing back on his solutions and his suggestions, right? So he wants to change my self-concept in ways that he believes are real. So the task of therapy is to reconcile the differences, to meet somewhere in the middle. All right? To come to some compromise, I guess. Hopefully both will learn to give up their goals, for it is only in relationships that salvation can be found. At the beginning, it is inevitable that patients and therapists alike will accept unrealistic goals, right? And not completely unrealistic goals, not completely free of magical overtones. They are finally given up in the minds that are finally given up in the minds of both, right? Suggesting that therapy is the process. Then hopefully both learn to give up these goals of making the illusion better. Right? And that's done within a relationship, the relationship of patient to therapist. But it's done in every relationship. Right? That's how we realize, that's how we remember. Right? This is the story of how we begin to remember, as Paul Simon would say. But that's what therapy can help us do. It can help us begin to remember. And that happens within the relationship. And we'll see, Jesus will tell you, within the relationship of patient and therapist, or client therapist, however, is the idea of forgiveness. It always comes down to forgiveness, right? Which is not the forgiveness to destroy, which is that I see what's wrong with you and I just let it go. I overlook it. That's not it. It's truly being willing to see the truth about the other, right? Which means that I need to go into my mind, that part of my mind that remembers my connection with the oneness, that remembers my connection with God, so to speak, if you can handle that word. All right. Or the all that is. I am connected to that. Right? The problem is I believe I disconnected from that. And now I'm here in this frightening world. It's me or you. All right? And within that relationship, if one or the other is willing to see the truth about the other, that's the process of forgiveness. That's leading to the change. All right? That's leading to the awareness of who you truly are. All right? And it can happen within the relationship of psychotherapist and patient. This is why Jesus says we're all psychotherapists. Because we can always, if we're willing, in whatever situation we're in, you know, whether you're at the checkout counter at some big box store, all right, or a little bodega, and that the person behind the counter, you're having a relationship with them in that moment. In that moment, there can be the healing. I'm willing to see the truth. Right? And that just opens you up to be a channel of love. Right? You're not doing anything except being willing to open up and let the love come through you. That's the healing. That's the process. Because minds are joined. Even in this giant dissociative identity disorder world that we live in. The minds are joined. All right. So hopefully both will learn to give up their original goals, like making the illusion better. For it is only in relationships that salvation can be found. Right? To realize that we have the same needs. That's a great beginning. We have the same need, right? To be released from this illusion, right? To be released from the effects of this giant hallucination that we live in. And try not to be afraid of that idea that this is a giant hallucination. Just keep going back to that place in your mind that remembers, and that's where safety lies. All right? You're safe within that memory. All right? And just allow it to come through you more and more. All right? At the beginning, it is inevitable that patients and therapists alike accept unrealistic goals, not completely free of magical overtones. They are finally given up in the minds of both. Right? Eventually, we give up the idea that there's a solution in the world. Right? Process. Okay? So finally, we get to, that was the introduction, we get to chapter 1 in this section, the limits on psychotherapy. Right. Yet the ideal outcome is rarely achieved. All right, Jesus bursts the balloon right there. The ideal outcome is rarely achieved. Therapy begins with the realization that healing is of the mind. And in psychotherapy, those And in psychotherapy, those have come together who already believe this. It may be that they will not get much further, for no one learns beyond his own readiness. Yet levels of readiness change, and when therapist or patient has reached the next one, there will be a relationship held out to them that meets the changing need. Perhaps they will come together again and advance in the same relationship, making it holier. Or perhaps each one of them will enter into another commitment. Be assured of this: each will progress. Retrogression is temporary. The overall direction is one of progress toward the truth. It just reminds me of something that's said in a text where Jesus says, a journey from yourself does not exist. All right? We're always working toward that realization of who we are, that memory of who we are. All right? So, yet the ideal outcome is rarely achieved in the therapist's office or whatever. Realizing that I am the decision maker and I can decide, and then I realize that I never left my home. All right? But he says it's a process. He knows this is a process. So he says therapy begins with the realization that healing is of the mind. Right? And usually the people that come to the therapist, they believe that too. That's why they come to someone who deals with thought processes and emotions and all that, things that are of the mind. Right? And in psychotherapy, those have come together who already believe this. He says it might be that they don't get that much further, right? For no one learns beyond his own readiness. Right? So it's being ready being willing to be open and to learn, to see differently. Right? He says, and even at that, levels of readiness change. Levels of readiness change. And when the therapist or patient has reached the next level, so to speak, there will be a relationship held out to them that meets their changing need. Once again, suggesting process, stepping stones. All right? As we go along, our willingness to hear the truth, our willingness to realize the truth, our readiness changes. And we level up, as the gamers would say. Right? There will be a relationship held out to them that meets the changing need. Right? Things come along that fit your needs. Perhaps they will come together again and advance in that same relationship. Perhaps a couple of years later, you go back to the same therapist and you make some inroads, you make some progress. Right? Or perhaps they go to a different therapist. Perhaps they come together again or advance in the same relationship, making it holier, right? And that's making it a holier relationship, is that one or the other person is not projecting onto the other. They're willing to see the truth about the other. That makes the relationship holier, if not holy indeed. Right? Or perhaps each one of them will enter into another commitment. Perhaps you have a different relationship. But be assured of this, each will progress. Right? Retrogression is temporary. You don't get stuck in the falling back. So you make a mistake, you just brush yourself off and get back on the path. Right? You'll see, you'll be able to do that if you haven't done that already by this point. The overall direction is one of progress toward the truth. All right? We learn at our own pace. Jesus is not standing behind us, prodding us. Hey, hurry up, come on. You know, the rest of the sonship is waiting for you. It's not like that. We learn at our own pace. Right? A Course in Miracles is very gentle, very gentle. Jesus is very gentle. Right? Jesus is a symbol of who we truly are. Jesus is a symbol of a bridge between me and my Creator. Right? He's the big brother. Right? He's helping, giving us a hand up. Right? Someone once was comparing Ken to Jesus or a great prophet or something, and he just said, no. He said, it's like you all came here to learn how to play basketball, and I just happen to be a better basketball player at the moment. So I'm teaching you some things, right? And later on, Jesus is going to talk about the word awe. He says, that's not an appropriate reaction to me. So it was not an appropriate reaction to Ken Wapnick either. And he was telling us that, no. I'm your brother. I'm just half a step ahead of you. All right? I've walked the path. I'm just showing you where the path is. Giving you some helpful hints. All right? We learn at our own pace, and nobody pushes us. All right? So, paragraph 2, psychotherapy itself cannot be creative. This is one of the errors which the ego fosters, that it is capable of true change, and therefore of true creativity. When we speak of the saving illusion, or the final dream, this is not what we mean. But here is the ego's last defense: resistance. Resistance is its way of looking at things, its interpretation of progress and growth. Those interpretations will be wrong of necessity because they are delusional. The changes the ego seeks to make are not really changes. They are but deeper shadows, or perhaps different cloud patterns. Yet what is made of nothingness cannot be called new or different. Illusions are illusions. Truth is truth. All right. He says that's why psychotherapy is not creative. It's not involved in the ultimate truth, in the real world. All right. It's helping us get there. All right. He says, and the ego uses this. All right? This is one of the errors which the ego fosters. All right? That the psychotherapy can have true creativity, true change. All right? All right? But it's what Jesus is saying is that it's limited. It's just limited. It's a stepping stone. Right? When we speak of the saving illusion, right, or the final dream, right, this is not what we mean. But here is the ego's last defense. Right? So the ego resists the truth. Right? Resistance is its way of looking at things. It's the way it interprets progress and growth. Right? You know, the ego always has the yeah, but, and you know, stuff like that. And Freud was the one who first captured the idea of resistance in therapy, in the therapeutic process. He would call it the, one of the things he would call it is the flight into health, right? Which is what the ego would say, oh yeah, I finally got it, the saving illusion, the great, the final dream. We got it in therapy. It's the flight into health. I'm okay now, right? And that's what happens in the therapeutic process, right? Some people they just go as far as they can, and then they say, okay, I'm done. I'm done now. I feel better. I feel better. Thank you. And they leave the process, the therapeutic relationship, because for some reason or another they become uncomfortable with it. All right. And this is the ego's resistance. That's all. Just the resistance to the ultimate change. All right. Just resisting the building blocks. But like he says, retrogression is temporary. Going backward is temporary. You go as far as you can. That's it. Nobody pushes you. Sooner or later, your spirit, your essence will want to venture forth, so to speak. Right? Like the figure in the tarot. The first card is the fool stepping off the cliff. That's the equivalent of the the mind saying, okay, I'm ready to learn whatever I can learn, But it's you go at your own pace. So the changes that the ego seeks are not really changes. They're but deeper shadows, different cloud patterns, he calls them. Right? Yet what is made of nothingness cannot be called new or different. Illusions are illusions. Truth is truth. Right? So we end the resistance. We end all resistance, right, when we turn to the Holy Spirit in the mind. That's the opening up. That's the end of resistance. I'm willing to see. I'm willing to see the truth. Right? Paragraph 3, resistance as defined here can be characteristic of the therapist as well as the patient. Okay? Either way, it sets a limit on psychotherapy because it restricts its aims. Nor can the Holy Spirit fight against the intrusions of the ego on the therapeutic process. But he will wait, and his patience is infinite. His goal is wholly undivided, always. Whatever resolutions patient and therapist reach in connection with their own divergent goals, they cannot be completely reconciled as one until they join with his. Only then is all conflict over, for only then can there be certainty. All right? So he says, look, the therapist can be resistant too, even unbeknownst to them. It's the ego slipping into the way of thinking. I mean, there's all different ways. Therapists can be resistant too. Right? Either way, it sets a limit on psychotherapy because it restricts its aims. Right? And the Holy Spirit doesn't fight against it. Because if the Holy Spirit fights against it, resistance, it makes resistance real. It makes the illusion real. That's why the Holy Spirit just looks and waits. Right? As the beautiful saying goes, love waits on welcome, not on time. Right? So the Holy Spirit just waits. You can't push against the resistance. Right? He's not going to reach in and change your mind for you, turn a switch. He's waiting for me to approach the Holy Spirit and say, okay, I'm willing to see correctly. I'm willing to have my perspective changed. All right? But he will wait. All right? Nor can the Holy Spirit fight against the intrusions of the ego on the therapeutic process. All right? But he will wait. And his patience is infinite. His goal is wholly undivided always. Right? Whatever illusions patient and therapist reach in connection with their own divergent goals, they cannot be completely reconciled as one until they join with him. Right? So whatever the goals of you or your therapist are, they can't really be reconciled until we join with the memory of who we really are, until we join with the Holy Spirit. All right? Now, you don't need to be Christian or anything. These are just Christian terms. All right? You just need to join with the idea of, I want to see the truth. All right? I want to see the truth. All right? Because the Holy Spirit, the memory of your true existence, comes with us into the dream, and it's patient. Right? It just reminds me of a line in the text where Jesus says, "Look, you look on the roads, and on some of these roads you travel gaily for a while." Not realizing that they all go to the same place. Not paraphrasing yet. But what he says is, perhaps you'd like to try them all. All right? And he says, I'll wait. He said, and then another place he says, if you want to be like me, I will help you. All right? And if not, if you're resistant, I'll wait for you to change your mind. So if you're resistant, the Holy Spirit just waits until that resistance wears down. And you go, okay, I've tried everything. Help me out here. Right? His patience is infinite. His goal is wholly undivided always. His goal is for us, you and me, to realize we're not separated from the oneness. His goal is to realize that we are innocent. We never separated. We never committed a sin. All right? So whatever resolutions the patient and the therapist reach in connection with their own divergent goals, they cannot be completely reconciled until they join with his. Only then is all conflict over. For only then can there be certainty. Only when I join with the Holy Spirit is all conflict over. All right. Paragraph 4. Ideally, psychotherapy is a series of holy encounters in which brothers meet to bless each other and to receive the peace of God. And this will one day come to pass for every patient on the face of this earth. For who except the patient could possibly have come here? The therapist is only a somewhat more specialized teacher of God. He learns through teaching. And the more advanced he is, the more he teaches and the more he learns. But whatever stage he is in, there are patients who need him just that way. They cannot take more than he can give for now. Yet both will find sanity at last. Right? I think this is wonderful. Right? I think this is wonderful. There are many people in, well, I mean, you could say that any relationship, all right, is like this. He says, ideally, psychotherapy is a series of holy encounters. All right, the holy encounter is when I'm willing to see the truth about you. All right? Help me to see this person as they truly are. That's a holy encounter. He says, where brothers meet to bless each other. All right, once again, in the year 2024, we are forgiving Jesus for his consistent use of masculine pronouns and masculine words. All right? And if there's if you have a problem with that, ask for help with that, seriously. It just is the way it was written, because we realize that all are brothers and sisters, okay? We all have the same need to be released from this belief that we're separate. Right? So we meet in order to bless each other. Namaste, bro. Namaste. That light in me sees the light in you. However you translate that word. Right. So we meet to bless each other and to receive the peace of God. Right? We receive the peace of God, and then we see the face of Christ everywhere, the innocence. And this will one day come to pass for every patient on the face of the earth. And he has patient here in quotes because he says everybody that comes here is a patient. Everybody who walks the face of the earth is a patient. All right? Everybody needs to heal the mind. And the therapist is only a somewhat more specialized teacher of God. So the therapist is only someone who can demonstrate a little bit better the peace of God and how to attain it. Right. And the teacher of God learns through teaching. Right. So everyone becomes that teacher of God. Everyone who has that desire to become the channel of peace. Right. And I'm thinking right now of some friends I've met that are in the business of counseling. All right? And it's like you start where you are. You're demonstrating the peace of God. You're by not projecting guilt onto the other, onto the patient, onto the person who needs the counseling. And by demonstrating peace, right, by demonstrating that you see the innocence, right, you learn more and you advance. And the more advanced he is, the more he teaches and the more he learns. And remember that in the Course, the idea of teaching is demonstrating. Right? It's not proselytizing. It's not doing this, what I'm doing here. All right? It's in our day-to-day activities and your encounters with everyone, it's demonstrating that we're not separated from the oneness. It's demonstrating that you're not guilty. It's teaching that. And the more advanced he is, the more he teaches and the more he learns. But whatever stage he's in, right, or she, please, there are patients who need him just that way. There are patients who need you just the way you are. Okay? They cannot take more than you can give for now. All right? And yet the both of you will find sanity at last. All right? And sanity is that healthy mind. That mind that is no longer split. You'll find that at last. All right? So wherever you are on your journey, you can help or be helped. All right? And it's a wonderful thing to have that impetus to help. It's a wonderful thing. So as he says, only patients come here to this world of form. All right? So we can all be therapists if we're willing to make each encounter a holy encounter. I'm willing to see the truth in you. All right? But in the scope of psychotherapy, it's good for both patient and therapist to start to, not project guilt on the other. Right? To take back those projections and ask to see them clearly. Right? But whatever the case, right? Therapy is a stepping stone. It can be very helpful. In removing the blocks to the awareness of who you truly are. All right? Hope I haven't made up different clouds for you, different cloud formations here. All right? Remember, every encounter is a holy encounter, and only patients come here. All right? I think that's pretty funny. So until next time, thank you very much. All right. These things always help me, and I appreciate it. Appreciate the opportunity. See you next time. Bye.